Hi, this is Brent, and today I want to go over the last tutorial in the app development section. And under app refinement, we're at investigate and fix a bug. So this is going to show us how to use unit tests and Xcode debugger so that we can find and fix bugs. If you've been following along in the previous videos, we're going to work with the Grateful Moments app that we've been building. If you don't have it, you can go ahead and download it here and follow along in that way. In the tutorial, it talks about some feedback. It says, it's Thursday. I saved entries on Tuesday and Wednesday. Today my streak was 0 until I saved an entry. After that, the streak became 3. So what we want to do is first reproduce the issue. But instead of waiting 3 days trying to figure it out, we're going to simulate the conditions. So we're going to use a unit test to do that. So let's go over to Xcode. Go ahead and open the Grateful Moments app. And the first thing we want to do is add the unit testing framework as a target. So to do that, we're going to say File, New, and choose Target. And under iOS, you can scroll all the way down, and it's the unit testing bundle. Go ahead and select that, choose Next, and then it's going to give it a name automatically, and it's going to be related to the Grateful Moments project. So go ahead and choose Finish. Let's go to the folder down at the bottom. Notice it created this Grateful Moments tests folder, and then we have a file called Grateful Moments tests. Now, because this particular bug was found in the streak calculations, we're going to rename this. So we'll right-click, choose Refactor, and then choose Rename, and then we'll call it Streak Calculator Tests. And for the test, we're going to rename this example to Test Calculations. And then we're going to delete the async and throws. Let's go ahead, and we want to be able to test the Grateful Moments code. And so we use a macro called @testable, and then we do an import and we say Grateful Moments, press tab. And then we want to import foundation because we want to reference a date. So in the top of the struct, we want to declare a variable called let streak calculator equal streak calculator. Whoops, not the test, just the streak calculator. And then say let now equal date dot now. So we're going to reference a date, and then in our code, we're going to run some tests to make assumptions on how it should calculate based on reference to today. Now, in the tutorial, it mentions, and I want to read it because it's important to understand how this works. It says, declaring and reusing a single timestamp guards against the rare case of a unit test executing across the border of a day. When a suite of unit tests grows to cover lots of app functionality, it's common to run tests as part of an automated process. Frequently verifying that each part of an app works as expected prevents bugs and requires that unit tests succeed and fail consistently. So in our case, because we're calculating streaks, and a streak goes from the end of one day to the beginning of the next, beginning of one day to the end of the next, it's a 24-hour period. We want to make sure that we're referencing a date in relation to today. In the function itself, let's get rid of this comment. And we're going to say let days equal, and then an array. We want -2, -1. And then we'll say let expected streak equals 2. Then we need to create a moment, so we say let moments equals an array of moment objects. So now we have a moment array. And then we say let streak equal, and then we're going to call the streak calculator dot calculate streak for moments. And then the expectation, so we say pound expect, we're going to say streak equals expected streak. So we're setting this up so that we have 2 days in a row, 2 days ago and 1 day ago. And then we want to use that to compare and see if we can reproduce the issue. Because the person reported that they had a moment in the last 2 days, but it didn't show the streak until they entered a new moment for the day. So it's supposed to return a streak of 2 because there was a moment created these 2 days. Now, in this calculation, we need to update moments so that we actually pass in and calculate. So what we're doing is we're going to say days.map, and then an open curly brace. We're going to say let date equal calendar dot current dot date, and we're going to do the by adding dot day, comma, and then a value, which is going to be the value for each item in the array. So 0, or each item in days, because there's 2 days. So then 0, it's the $0. So remember, $0 refers to each, as it goes through each item in the array, and then it's going to compare it to now. And then we're going to force unwrap it, because we know it exists, and then we're going to say return, and we're going to create a new moment. We'll just create an empty moment that is empty string, and then note, and then a timestamp, let's see, timestamp, date. Let's see, make sure. So we've got the title, the note. Oh, I did that wrong. Okay, so for each day in this array, so we have 2 of them, for each day we're going to create a new moment, and we're going to put the date based on comparing the day to today, which means we're creating a date 2 days ago, so -2, so 2 days ago, and then a date that's 1 day ago. So now we've created the moment. So now when we pass in the moments, it's going to run the calculation for 2 moments, and then we expect the streak to be 2. So let's go ahead and run this, and we can run it by either clicking the little icon to run the test, or you can say product test. Now when you run this the first time, remember it's going to build the app. If you look up here in the progress, it's going to build the app, run it in the simulator, and then it's going to run the tests. And again, the first time it does this, it's going to take a few minutes. So we might skip ahead here. Okay, so it came back and it failed. So it says expectation failed, streak is 0, where it expected it to be 2. So we've successfully reproduced this bug using a unit test. Because again, the tester was saying they had recorded 2 moments over 2 days, and then the streak was showing as 0 instead of 2. And then when they created a streak for that current day, then all of a sudden it said 3. So we've successfully reproduced the bug. So now we get to figure out why that is happening. Let's jump over to the project and the streak calculator, which is in the logic folder. And we're going to use a function called print. And we're going to print out the value so that we know what the current value is at a given moment in the function. So we're going to say print days ago array. Let's go ahead and test this again, and it should launch faster. And when it runs, it's actually outputting to the console. We don't see the console yet. So if you come down here to the bottom where we can see the console, and then if you didn't see that, it's this bottom right button. So here's the console, and notice some output. There's a bunch of things, and this is related to the test suite. When you're running the unit tests, it calculates and outputs into the console a bunch of information. And this right here is the output of the days ago array. Let's add a few more print statements, and we want to see where the calculation, what's happening when it's going through the function. So in the for loop, it's going to calculate days ago equals streak, and then streak plus equals 1. So let's do a print statement increasing streak 2, and then we'll use string interpolation. So you do the backslash open parentheses streak. So now it will output the value of that variable. And then let's change this to else, and we'll do another print statement that says didn't increase streak. Okay, let's go ahead and run this again. So choose test. Notice the console will clear, and then it runs, and then of course it fails again. So now we see that, okay, it didn't increase the streak. So we had 2 days, we had days ago array, so we had the correct values, but it didn't increase. So what's happening is the streak starts at 0, but days ago will start at 1. So this value here where it says 1, it's never, this initial comparison will never be true. So the streak is not updating correctly. So the algorithm counts the streak starting from today. And so it's not based on what is expected. So let's fix this. The first thing we're going to do is move this. Let's go ahead and rewrite. Let's just rewrite this if statement. So the first check is if days ago is equal to streak, we're going to print and we're going to say streak already here, don't increase the streak. And then we're going to use a keyword called continue. Whoops, continue. Then we're going to say else if days ago is equal to streak plus 1, then we're going to increase. So here we're going to say print a moment exists the day after, the day after the current streak. And so we're going to say streak plus equals 1. And then we'll print increased streak 2. Use the string interpolation, so backslash open parenthesis streak. And then we'll do an else. We'll say print streak of, and then we'll pass in the variable streak broken with days ago. And then we'll wrap that days ago value. There we go. And then after that, we're going to say break. Okay, let's talk about what's going on. So the first check is if days ago and streak are the same value, then we don't need to update anything. When you use the keyword continue, it's going to continue in the loop. So it's looping through everything in the array. And so it just continues the loop. If days ago is equal to streak plus 1, then that means we need to add, there's a moment that exists the day after the current streak, so that means we need to increase the streak. So then we say increased streak. Otherwise, if days ago, if it's not increased, in other words, they went a day without creating a moment, then it's going to, says the streak is broken with days ago because it skipped a day. And so when that happens, then you call the keyword break, which jumps out, ends the for loop. So that's what the keyword break means. Now that we've updated that, let's go ahead and run it and see how it goes. So the build works, and hey, we passed. So notice if you look at the iteration, so the first time it says a moment exists the day after the current streak. So they increased the streak to 1. And then the next time around it says again. And so they increased the streak to 2. And then the calculations in the the test calculations, the expectation is streak equals expected streak, which is 2. And so it passed. So right now we've fixed the one bug. We want to be able to run more unit tests in order to make sure we didn't introduce more bugs. So let's update this test calculations function so that we can pass in more parameters and we can calculate things a little better. So to do that, what we want is to create a struct called input. And that's going to have let expected streak, which is an int, and it's going to have let days, which is an array of ints. So now we've got an input, and what we want is in the function, we're going to say let input equal input, and we say expected streak, we're going to say 2. And then in the days array, we're going to say -2, -1. And then from here, in the calculation, we just have to say input.days to map it. And then the expectation down at the bottom will be input.expected streak. And then we can add a comma and we can pass in, and we say string interpolations, say input dot days, so that we can see that in the output. So what we've done is we've created a struct to keep track of the expected streak and the days, and then right now we've kind of parameterized it. We can actually run this and see that it still works. So run and test. So it's passed. Now we want to be able to pass in arguments to the calculation so that we can try multiple variations, multiple streaks and number of days to verify that our function is actually calculating everything as expected. So to do that, let's cut this input. So go ahead and we'll just go ahead and delete it. And then above the function, we're going to say at test and say streak calculations. And then we're going to pass in arguments. which takes an array. And inside the array, then we'll say input. And here we could say expected streak 2 days, -2, -1. And then in the function, we'll remove the test on that function. And then we pass in input, which takes an input. So now what happens is we have this array of arguments, and this will run this method passing in the input for each one of these arguments. And notice that we have it listed as test and then arguments right above the function name. Now I'm going to copy and paste. There's a whole bunch of arguments that the tutorial has, so you can go ahead and copy and paste that as well. But for our purposes, I'm off screen here. And I'm going to come up here, and after this one, I'm going to press Control V. Nope. Hold on. Copy. Paste. So now I've got a bunch of inputs. Okay, we need a comma after each one, so make sure there's a comma. All right. So when we run the test now, it's going to run the test for each one of these arguments. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 calculations that it's going to run. So let's go ahead and try that, see how we did. All right, it has failed. And if you look over here on the left, it tells you which inputs it failed on. So it failed on this one where it says 1 and days were 0. And it failed on this one where it says days are expected 1 and there were 2 zeros and 3. So it's failing on certain combinations. So these are failing because it's not counting today. So it's not counting the 0 as one as a streak. Because if you created a moment today, then you should have a streak of 1. And so that's why these are failing. So let's go back to the streak calculator. And after we calculate the streak, we're going to call one more, we're going to update one more, which says if days ago array dot first equals 0, then streak plus equals 1. So basically, and there's a comment, we can add this comment here. It says streak is calculated above starting from yesterday. Not yet saving a moment. What does that say? It says not yet saving a moment today shouldn't break the streak. And it says a moment has been saved today, include it in the streak. Okay, let's go ahead and run this, make sure that it passes. Okay, very good. So all of our tests were passing. So here we did a couple things. One, we used print statements so that you could see where things are happening. And you can use print statements to print all sorts of things. There's a lot of things you can do for formatting responses and outputting values from variables and things within the app. What you'll want to do, though, is when you're ready to ship an app to production, meaning it's going live in the App Store, You want to remove the print statements because it's something that you don't need these showing up and taking up. It's technically, I don't know, there's a plus and minus to having print statements. When you release a build to the App Store, you're releasing what's called a release build, and so you won't get this debugging. But anyway, it's good practice to go ahead and remove it. Now, in our case, instead of just removing the print statements, we can actually describe in a comment what's happening so that you know how the logic works so that you don't forget when you come back to this. So here we're going to say streak already here. Don't increase the streak. And then you could say 5 posts in 1 day is 1 streak. 5 posts in 2 days is a 2 streak. Because again, it doesn't matter how many times you've created a moment, it only counts once in a day. Then here for this other print statement, we're going to say a moment exists the day after the current streak, add to the streak. And then we can remove that. We can also remove this one here where it says print days ago. Let's remove that. And then for this one, we can say the streak breaks if jumping more than 1 day. All right. So unit tests are a great way to reproduce bugs as well as validate the code that you use to fix it, and especially where you're using multiple arguments in order to test various scenarios so that you can really make sure that the logic in your code is working properly. All right, that is everything in this video. Let's go back and take a look at the questions. Check our understanding. How should you resolve a bug report? Change the described behavior. Try to reproduce the bug, determine the correct behavior, and change the app so that all user flows work correctly. Fix the bug. I'm going to go with that one. Yep. Investigate to determine what's wrong. If any bugs are found, fix them and test the app thoroughly. Sweet. Well, that was pretty quick. So this ends the current run of videos that I've made for this tutorial list. So what we've covered, if you haven't seen all of the videos so far, we've talked about all of the content in the Swift UI section. We dealt with the data modeling, and then we've gone through the app development sections. In the future, I'll go through the machine learning, but the other ones, the app design, there's not a lot of code to review. It's more concepts and things you can practice on your own. And the same with app distribution. I'll probably address this later in some other videos. But for now, this ends the string of videos that I was making for the Develop in Swift tutorials. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to start a new series, and this will be on another programming language, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.